Congressional Democrats and left-wing media are literally trying to convince Americans that they'll be safer if they're unable to defend themselves. They want you to see the firearm as a hindrance rather than an asset. According to the FBI, there are approximately 1.2 million violent crimes reported in America every year. According to several studies, including the Armed Resistance to Crime study and those done by the CDC and Georgetown University, there are up to 2.5 million violent attacks halted because the potential victim was armed. So let me get this straight. Approximately 2/3 of all violent attacks that occur in America, or at least those that are reported, are stopped because good people carry firearms? And Democrats are trying to sell the notion to the public that reducing firearm possession will somehow prevent these attacks? Do they expect people to believe that if those 2.5 million people who will defend their lives with a firearm every year were to give up those firearms, that somehow violent attacks would go down? Isn't it convenient for the political left to create legions of angry, dysfunctional people who ultimately do exactly what we expect? They go out and they kill people because they can't grapple with their own psychology. Then the left uses those killed to justify more gun control laws, which ultimately only restrict the law-abiding. In other words, gun laws for those who didn't commit the crime to prevent those who did from doing it again, even though we know that killers don't follow gun laws to begin with. Does any of this make any logical sense? The truth is, it doesn't. But there are some who live among us who are so committed to defending left-wing political ideology that they'll ignore rational thought for the purpose of defending an anti-gun narrative that they have been committed to for years. And to all those who call for more gun laws and defend killers by claiming that they're not necessarily crazy, well, my question is, wouldn't they have to be to take innocent lives? It's pretty clear the political left is normalizing mental disorders and anger through media spin, propaganda, and a constant drumbeat of topics designed to justify violence against others. From climate extremism to racial outrage to the normalization of gender dysphoria. Is it any surprise that those people who are spun into confusion about everything around them reach a tipping point where they act out violently? What happens when you start to realize that you've been tricked by the very people you trusted, but you can't call them out because you depend on them for ideological support, and you can't abandon your beliefs because the very people you trusted will turn on you? The political left has mastered control over those who got caught in their psychological spiderweb. We've already seen 2 assassination attempts on President Trump and several attacks on innocent children in schools, all perpetrated by left-wing activists, and all a result of irrational, manufactured hatred and rage through propaganda that's protected by self-fulfilling so-called fact-checkers. Now, the irony of it all is that those who support and contribute to the manifestation of anger and rage in our country on a wide variety of topics are the first ones at the crime scene to call out for more gun laws. It almost seems like they want violence to occur so they can use it for political purposes. But that couldn't be true. Immediately after a Minnesota man committed a violent act of rage on innocent children at a church in Minnesota, groups like Moms Demand Action, Everytown for Gun Safety, and the Giffords Group called out for more gun laws that would have done nothing to stop this particular incident. After all, Minnesota already has red flag laws and universal background checks. They already have restrictions on so-called assault weapons and a ban on firearms in schools. But none of these restrictions impeded the Minnesota church killer in any way. The anti-gun left clamors for more of the same failed gun control, with never a mention of the psychological issues that we continue to avoid addressing in America, and certainly no mention of the fact that armed security would have likely prevented the attack. The truth is, had there been armed security at this and other churches and schools, attacks like this would likely never happen in the first place. Joe Biden's 1990 Gun-Free School Zones Act is absolutely a contributing factor to these types of incidents. The Minnesota killer intentionally chose students as his targets specifically because they would be defenseless. He intentionally chose a gun-free zone. Just listen to what he said in his manifesto. The killer said, "I recently heard a rumor that James Holmes, the Aurora Theater shooter, may have chosen venues that were gun-free zones. I would probably aim the same way. Holmes wanted to make sure his victims would be unarmed. That's why I and many others like schools so much." The killer's own words confirm what common sense already tells us. Gun-free zones are magnets for violence. But rather than addressing this, the left continues to promote strategies that leave innocent people exposed. Even more alarming, while we refuse to confront the mental health crises that fuel these attacks, the political left actively celebrates them. At the same time, instead of acknowledging how helplessness increases the death toll, they push for policies that make Americans even more vulnerable. The irony is, every single gun law implemented works to further deteriorate the Second Amendment rights of lawful American citizens, while psychological issues are celebrated and often medicated to the point of catastrophic results. Contrary to left-wing spin, more guns in the hands of good people do prevent violent attacks from occurring in America, and the gun grabbers know this. The ugly truth is that disorder and mayhem serve those who want political domination, and it would seem that they will do everything they can to continue the cycle of violence. Well, it's up to us to stop them, which is why GOA will always maintain a no-compromise position and stand up to the gun grabbers. Our founding fathers knew these people would show up one day. That's why they wrote the Second Amendment. Thanks for watching Bullet Points. I'm Dan Wass for Gun Owners Foundation. You can find more Second Amendment content and updates at gunowners.com.